Hi everyone, it's Nicki here and I'm back with some more author questions for you. It's a lovely sunny day here in Adelaide, but I've decided to stay in and film these videos for you guys, so hopefully you'll enjoy them. So we got up to question 18 at the end of the last video, so today we're going to do 19 to 24. So without any further ado, let's kick off, shall we? How did you get into writing and what made you select your genre of choice? In terms of getting into writing, I've always wanted to write ever since I was a child. I loved books, and every time we read one I always remember thinking and saying to my parents that, you know, one day I would write one of my own. So when I finally got into it, I actually started with fan fiction. That was in my late teens, early 20s. I put a few pieces up on adultfanfiction.net. There's no point going there, they're not on there anymore, but I still have one or two little one-shot pieces on my DeviantArt account, so if you want to check some of my fan fiction out, you can do so there. And it was in 2011 that a friend of mine who was a published author, she'd read some of my fan fiction and she encouraged me to submit a short story to a publisher with whom she was working at the time. And so that was my first piece, Awake into the Night. That publisher's shut now, but that story is available for free on my Tableau page, so I'll put a link to that below for you. Genre-wise, I mean, I do quite a mix of genres. In my mainstream writing it tends to be paranormal fantasy, and I mean, I read a lot of that, I watch a lot of that, so it's pretty a natural fit for me. For my romances, I've done a bit of everything really, from those genres through to contemporary and historical. It really just depends what story comes to my head, and I enjoy historical. I want to start doing a bit more of that, because I've always been a history fan, and I love working in all the period detail and doing my research and everything. So yeah, I guess that kind of answers it. I won't go too much into details about genres and that, because I'm sure somewhere in here there's probably some more detailed questions about it, so we'll wait to get to them. Question 20. What element of writing, setting, character, etc., do you find most challenging? I guess I would say setting, in that I'm always really conscious about info dumping, so it's trying to work in enough information about the setting to give you the atmosphere and for you to be able to picture it without getting into really showing rather than, you know, you want to show not tell most of the time, so I don't want to just tell you the every minute detail of the room. I want you to be able to just picture it for yourself. So I guess that's probably the hardest thing for me, is just getting that balance right with telling you enough that you can picture it, but without going into so much detail that, you know, you don't have any freedom of imagination within the story. Question 21. What is the ultimate goal with your writing? Fame, fortune, or changing the world? I really don't see my writing changing the world, unless Ragnarok actually happens, in which case the Ragnarok Chronicles could be extremely useful. But barring that, look, I think anyone who writes, you write partly because you've got a story inside that you want to share, but I mean, I'm sure I'm no different than many other writers, that there's also the part of you that hopes that one day people will know your name and, have you read that great book by Nicki, you know, her new book's out. That would be wonderful. To suddenly sell movie rights and, you know, earn loads of money so that I could actually make a living doing it would be great too, but you have to be realistic, and I don't see either particularly happening, but I'll be happy so long as, if people do come across my books and read them, that they find some enjoyment in them. That's my main goal. 22. Barring a zombie apocalypse, well, Ragnarok, but a zombie apocalypse, is there anything that could make you stop writing? I'm not sure. I mean, obviously if I had some terrible accident that, you know, fingers crossed I won't, that physically made it hard for me to write, then that would be an issue. But I mean, I've had slumps. I had a slump when I had a couple of publisher closures that happened one after the other, and, you know, that's always disheartening. And it hit me quite badly this time, I think, having two at once, because I've had a couple before, but I mean, I've got out of it. I just didn't feel in the mood for writing for a few months, but I just pootled along with some old works that just needed a few revisions and got those done, and then eventually a new story idea came to me and my enthusiasm returned. So I don't see any, you know, major reason that I would ever stop, unless, you know, something really unexpected happened, but who can tell. 23. What's your favourite point of view and tense to write in and why? I honestly don't really have one. I don't really write in third person omniscient simply because there's such a backlash against it these days that, you know, I just want to give my book the best chance, so doing third person omniscient is not going to do that. I do some books in third person, and I've done third person. I think I mainly do third person in past tense, but I sometimes do first person, and first person I've done in both past tense and present tense, and it really just depends on the need of the story. The story I wrote in first person present tense, that character's voice was just so strong that it jumped out at me that that's how it had to be. We had to have him actually, he's talking to the reader, which is how that one eventuated. But yeah, I mean, I don't have one that I say I'll never write in this and I'll never write in that. I just look at each individual story, and once you start to plot it out and get an idea of it, you get a sense of what tense it should be. And sometimes if you're working on a piece and something's not quite clicking, if you change the tense or change the POV, that can make all the difference, and suddenly everything clicks. So yeah, anything goes. And number 24, the last one for today. It's gone quick again, hasn't it? How important is it to you to continue learning and brushing up on skills like grammar? Obviously it's important. I'm an editor as well, so for me grammar's always a thing. It's always happening in my mind, and obviously I'm doing professional development as part of my editing, particularly now I've joined the Institute of Professional Editors here in Australia. They offer lots of programs and events and things. Eventually I'm going to take their accreditation exam, hopefully. But yeah, I think it's just something all writers should do. How you do it, you know, it's up to you, whether you go in formal courses or you're just, you know, buying some great books and working on things yourself. But all writers should be striving to improve all the time, I think, and I'm certainly no exception there. So that was questions 19 through to 24, and I will be back with you again next month when we'll move on to the next batch. I look forward to seeing you then. Bye bye.